Everyone is obsessed with going analog. In a world dominated by screens and smart devices, why are people reverting to such a simple way of living? I didn't fully understand, so over the last year I replaced 5 everyday digital tools with their analog counterparts. In this video, I'll explain what's driving the shift, the impact these tools have had on me, and whether or not they're really as life-changing as people claim. In 2023, I started tracking my screen time. Between emails, productivity apps, habit trackers and social media, I was racking up 3.5 hours a day on my phone. At that rate, I was on track to spend over a decade of my life just scrolling. Well, obviously that didn't feel right, but my sense of unease didn't end there. My Kindle was packed with unread books, my cloud storage overflowing with crooked, unreviewed photos, and my smartwatch was tugging at my sleeve like a restless child. Tools I thought would enhance my life were starting to get in the way of experiencing it. Mundane, everyday activities that previously brought me joy, well, they were starting to feel a bit stressful, and my creativity and productivity were probably at their lowest for a decade. Digital tools used well can be life-changing, but their constant presence in mine just wasn't helping. It was diluting my experiences rather than enhancing them. And it's for this reason that people are turning to analog alternatives, not out of a sense of nostalgia, but to reclaim a sense of calm, to make space for deeper thinking, and to rediscover joy in life's simple moments. The question is, does it actually work? I swapped out 5 everyday digital items for their analog counterparts, trading convenience for simplicity, to see if I could figure that out. I'm going to explain how I used them, how they made me feel, and whether or not it was worth it. So let's talk about that, and if you get to the credits, let me know. I've tried to maintain a journaling habit for about 10 years now, and I've experimented with many different ways of doing it, both digitally and on paper. Until about a year ago, I was keeping a rolling journal on my phone in my notes app using a really simple practice inspired by the book Make Time by Jake Knapp and John Zaretsky. All I would do just before going to sleep every single night was write down my day's highlight. That's it. Because it was so simple, I was able to maintain that habit for several years, but I started to notice that doing it digitally was having unintended consequences. I'd usually do it on my phone, and as soon as I'd finish making an entry, completely on autopilot, I noticed I would just open Instagram and start scrolling. Before I knew it, I'd burnt 20 minutes, and depending on what I'd seen or read, I'd either be feeling a bit wired or anxious, and it would make it harder to get to sleep. So I ditched that completely and switched it for a notebook. As soon as I'm dressed, I'll write something called morning pages. It's a complete brain dump. Usually I'll write about things that are worrying me and how I might deal with them, or maybe about creative ideas that are bouncing around on the inside of my head. I'll write 3 pages every single morning, usually with a coffee and a candle burning at my side. And I enjoy the process so much that looking forward to doing it is often the last thing on my mind when I fall asleep. But it's also effective in a way that journaling digitally just never was. The notebook is there all the time, so I pick it up frequently and look through it and try and make sense of it all. I never looked at the stuff I wrote on my phone. It doesn't distract me in a way my phone does. It doesn't have a secret agenda. It doesn't care if it takes me a minute or an hour. I'm coming up with and capturing 10 times more ideas than I ever did. And if I'm blocked creatively, I know I can fish out ideas from my journal to get myself unstuck. The biggest benefit I'm noticing is that it just works better as a tool for reflection. When I was doing it on my phone, I could type faster than I could think, and because I was using predictive text, technology was taking care of some of the thinking for me. So I was just going through the motions and I wasn't really reflecting on what I was writing. When I write in a physical journal, it just takes time, and how I feel about something just sort of unfolds during the process of the writing. It's not efficient, but that's sort of the point. For me at least, it needs to take a bit of time for me to benefit from the practice. I can't make myself calm in a click. I can't process complex thoughts via predictive text. This is cool, actually. I have a terrible memory for experiences, so I've always wanted to hold on to keepsakes, receipts, ticket stubs, postcards, that kind of thing to jog my memory. But I also hate clutter, and over the years, that hatred has won out, and I haven't held on to this stuff. But now I journal, it has a home. I just insert it on the relevant day. So this is my Valentine's Day card, the perfect match from my wife. This year, a few days later, I was in Blackpool, which is a town in the north of England, with a friend of mine, and we played a game of bingo. And that night was wild in the literal sense of the word. And just flicking through this and coming across that instantly transports me back there and makes me happy. The possibilities with this thing are endless. I've used several smartwatches over the last 10 years, and the one that I purchased most recently was this one from Garmin. Are you going to focus? Yes. Which I think is called the Garmin Phoenix 6 Solar, something like that. It's a very cool watch. I bought it when I was training really seriously for a powerlifting competition, and I was using it to help me track my recovery. And for that purpose, it really was spectacular. But because it can do so much more than just be a watch, I succumbed to temptation. And before you know it, I was using it for a bunch of other purposes. Messages, music, maps. But the tap, tap, tap on my wrist was really problematic. When I was working and in flow, it was a constant source of distraction. And when I was trying to be present, a poorly timed buzz was guaranteed to snap me out of the moment. I was starting to feel a bit rude, and I could sort of see that my friends and family were getting a bit irritated. It was becoming a little sort of devil on my shoulder. So I swapped it out for tech that has been around since the 1700s. I've got a couple of watches, but this is the one I wear most. It's a Tag Aqua Racer. It's automatic, so it doesn't need a battery, and provided that I keep moving, it doesn't need to be wound. It was really expensive, for me anyway, but I think it's beautiful. It's like having a piece of design history on you at all times, and wearing it makes me feel cheerful. But the thing I love about it most is that it just does one thing really, really well. It doesn't interject itself into my life at random moments. I get to choose when I need it, and not the other way around. I literally never take it off, not to work out, not to go to sleep. And because I live in the middle of nowhere, it's really quiet at night. And when I'm trying to fall asleep, I can just about hear the second hand cutting through the silence. And it's soothing in a way. Switching from a smartwatch back to an analog watch does take a little bit of getting used to, and for the first couple of weeks, I was constantly clicking and tapping things that just didn't exist anymore. But very quickly, I realized I just didn't miss any of the functionality. It was actually a relief to have just one less distraction in my life, and it made concentrating on people I care about and creative projects that I wanted to make progress on just a little bit easier. I've got several friends who are admittedly very cool, who've taken photos on film for quite a long time, but I always secretly thought, surely you can just take better photos on your iPhone, and what about the cost of buying the film and getting it developed? But since starting this channel, I've become interested in cameras and cinematography and photography, and I started to get an itch to experiment with a film camera, so I bought one. To be specific, I got this Nikon TW Zoom 35-70. It's a pretty simple point-and-shoot camera, but I instantly liked the tactile nature of loading the film, the mechanical sound of the zoom lens, and the absolute simplicity of the shooting options. You can change where the camera focuses, zoom in and out, and choose whether or not you want the flash. And that's about it. But it wasn't until I'd shot and developed a few rolls of film that I started to understand why people get a kick out of this. Shooting on film is expensive. By the time you've bought the film and had it developed, it probably costs about $1 a photo. So instead of being trigger happy and snapping anything I came across, I noticed that I was starting to really look out for things that were worth capturing. A scene, a moment, an unlikely piece of architecture. Because I didn't have the luxury of snapping 50 photos, picking the best one, and editing it later on, I noticed that I was really paying attention and trying to find the best composition possible. I was spending 10, 15 seconds looking through the viewfinder, taking in all the details. I was slowing my breathing to avoid taking a crooked shot at the last minute. To get a shot that's even remotely interesting, you need to work for it. You need to try. And the process of slowing down was almost meditative. Like most people, I take photos to capture moments, and shooting on film is helping me to capture better moments and somehow to be more present while they're happening. I have a good digital camera. I'm shooting on it now and I love it. And I'm not for a moment suggesting that this 1980s point-and-shoot camera is technically better than this relatively new Sony camera. Of course it's not. But for my purposes, shooting on film is just more intentional. It's more creatively fulfilling, and as an experience, is quite calming. So in that sense, for me anyway, it's better. Hey, before we get on to the next one, if you're still here, believe it or not, you're part of a group of only about 20% of people that will still be watching the video at this point. So if you are enjoying it, I'd be so grateful if you gave it a like, because that'll help other people to find it in future. And if you could leave me a comment to let me know why you stuck around, that would also just be really helpful. Thank you so much. I got my first Kindle in 2009. It was a Christmas present from my mum, and I instantly fell in love with it. I read some of the most meaningful books of my life in digital format. But as it became easier and cheaper to buy digital books, I noticed I was starting to become a collector and not a reader. Books were becoming disposable, and that didn't feel very good. And I wasn't enjoying the process of reading in the way I used to. So I decided to switch back to physical books to see if I could rekindle my love for reading, and honestly, it's really worked. Last year I read about 25 books, which is 3 times the amount I read the year before. I mostly read paperbacks so I can throw them in my bag. I don't care if they get messed up and creased. I actually like it when that happens, because somehow the more beat up and weathered the book, the more the memory of reading it sticks in my mind. I leave them all around the house and I read several at a time. I get so excited to receive new books in the mail, and I'm constantly reading blogs and asking my smart friends to find recommendations for my reading list. Probably the most meaningful book I am reading at the moment is this, On the Road by Jack Kerouac. This is my wife's favourite book, and she's been trying to get me to read it for about 20 years, and for reasons that are not entirely clear to me, I have been resisting, and I've come to the conclusion that I was an idiot, because I wish I read this sooner. It's just beautiful. I really recommend it if you haven't read it yet. Anyway, I've gone a little bit overboard with the amount of books that I've got, and I don't really have anywhere to store them. But I'm going to say that cost has been worth rediscovering the joy of reading. So I'm going to take it on the chin. For a long time, I've wanted to be the kind of person that writes to their friends, someone who lifts them up, who lets them know that they're on my mind, and who makes them laugh when they need it most. So I've tried WhatsApp messages, DMs, text messages in stolen moments. I can usually bang them out really quickly and carry on with my day. But then I have this realization that if my friends are anything like me, and I know that many of them are, they are literally drowning in messages. Emails, DMs, WhatsApps, whatever it is, we're all drowning in this stuff, aren't we? And in my case, all that digital noise is quite a big source of stress. So I realized that in my attempt to do something nice and be kind, I might actually be making things worse. My friend John, however, does something different. He writes cards, beautiful, thoughtful, handwritten cards. A thank you note for a weekend spent in one of those company, a birthday card, perfectly timed to arrive a day early. And whenever I receive one, it's literally the highlight of my week. Even though John's handwriting is a complete disaster, his cards are never a source of stress. They are always a source of joy. So I decided to switch my DMs, not for cards, but for postcards. To make it easy, I bought a book of them, which now lives in my bag. And when someone's on my mind, I tear one out, write a considered message, stick a stamp on it, and put it in the post box. I try not to overthink it, because sometimes when I do, I start to feel a bit silly, and then I lose confidence in myself and put it off. So instead, I just say, hey, this is where I am, this is what I'm up to, and this is why you are on my mind. And because I write in these accidentally Wes Anderson postcards, I will often write in the style of one of his scripts, which entertains me, even if it doesn't them, so I intend to continue. DMs are disposable, read in an instant, forgotten in the next. Not worthless, but worth less than the written word. A postcard, though, that feels meaningful. I hope so, anyway. I know it's all a bit eccentric and maybe a little bit earnest, but it's also kind. And for that reason alone, I'm going to continue with it. Okay, if you've made it to the credits, then you might have noticed there's a common thread between some of these reflections. It's not so much that analog tools are inherently better than their digital counterparts. In some cases, they're really inefficient and can be quite annoying. But if your goal is anything like mine, to find joy in simple pleasures, to be a bit more reflective and create moments of calm, then if my experience is anything to go by, embracing analog tools can help to make that a reality in really sneaky ways that you might never have expected. If you're looking for more ways to introduce analog tools into your life, in this video, I share 3 ways I used a pocket notebook to help me break my addiction to my smartphone and to make progress on creative projects that had been stuck for years. It's a small habit, but it's had a transformative impact on my life. Catch you in the next one.